Hey, GM. What's up, guys?
GM, how's everyone doing?
GM, best day over here. Best day ever over here. How are y'all doing?
Is that a thing in the Shapeshift community? What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, well, I think it's a thing. We have like some gifts. I certainly say it every day. I've been with ShapeShift since 2018. It's fine if anyone wants to fork that and borrow it. Um, yeah, I think it's we like to be positive, and I definitely think that's part of the culture over at ShapeShift, which is especially valuable, as you guys know, in a bear market. So yeah, something I say every day, and I've been saying it every day now for 7 years about. And I will say, to be completely transparent, not every single day is better than the last day. There's obviously, if we all have bad days every once in a while, but absolutely the general trend has been upwards ever since I started saying it.
I've never seen Willie have a bad day for what it's worth.
If you ever hear me say that I'm just doing good, you know that something seriously wrong.
Good. Well, this is an amazing day because we saw Savers release on Shapeshift yesterday. So, I mean, how bad could today really be?
Yes, it's
Yeah, that
yesterday was the
definitely
best day
warrants the
ever.
best day ever.
100%.
Yeah, not sure if there's anyone else from your team that wants to come up. Uh, if there's like people from the audience that want to come up, let's just save that to the end. And like if there's contributors from Shapeshift or THORChain that want to come up and just speak, we're just gonna just talk here about you know Shapeshift, THORChain, the Savers integration, and just everything that's going on between these really cool communities. So yeah, let's get into it. Do you guys want to do a quick intro for yourselves, DeFi Cafe and Willie?
Yeah, sure, I'll go first. I'm DeFi Cafe. I run the engineering team at ShapeShift. We've also got Gomes from engineering down in the audience, and Gomes gets the credit for the THORChain Savers integration. So if you want to put your hand up, we'll get you up on stage. We've also got Kent Barton down in the audience as well, our tokenomics workstream leader. You guys, I'm sure they'll come up, but I'll let Willie give his introduction as well.
Thanks, DeFi. Thanks, Chad. Thanks, everybody. My name is Willie. I've been with ShapeShift since 2018, as I mentioned. Previously, I was the founder of Bitfract, which was built on top of ShapeShift and which ShapeShift acquired in 2018. It was the first tool where you could trade Bitcoin for multiple cryptos, and it was built on ShapeShift back in the good old days, pre-KYC. So I was principal product manager at ShapeShift until we decentralized, and my current role, now I'm just a member of the community at ShapeShift, and my official title is Head of Decentralization for the Fox Foundation, which is a separate entity from the ShapeShift DAO, and it has no control over the DAO. Its mission is to support the DAO in achieving full decentralization. And so it's also kind of like a stepping stone in ShapeShift's transition from a corporation, which was founded back in 2014, to a fully decentralized DAO. So the foundation was responsible for stewarding some of the legacy assets, like, for example, the trademark, the domain shapeshift.com. We also were maintaining the legacy centralized infrastructure for Shapeshift, which has since been sunset as of October. The users from the legacy centralized apps to the new open source app that DeFi and the Shapeshift DAO community have been building for about a year and a half now, which is fully open source. And we were able to basically rip out the backend, the servers and the databases that powered Shapeshift's legacy app. This new app is open source and architected for complete decentralization. And maybe we'll talk about that a little bit more today. And I see we've got Kent up here. So GM Kent, I'll pass it to you.
Hey, GM friends. Hello, Chad and THORChain people. Great to be here. So yeah, my name's Kent. I would describe myself as a decentralization maxi. Much like DeFi and Willie, I was also at centralized Shapeshift. I was head of R&D there. I started the Ethereum community in Denver back in 2014 and have been heavily involved in community organizing in ETH Denver. And these days, I'm the tokenomics workstream leader at ShapeShift DAO. So we focus on fun stuff like treasury management, value accrual to Fox, strategy, business model type stuff. And yeah, super excited about the ongoing partnership with THORChain and also especially today's Savers announcement.
Cool. I'm on the THORChain account as Familiar Cow. I'm the communications director at Nine Realms, one of the primary dev teams for THORChain. And then with me, I got Chad Thoreau helping me co-host. Hey, Chad.
Hey, yep, I'm Chad Thoreau. I co-host these spaces for THORChain, and I also do content and community stuff at THORSwap.
Cool. So, yeah. So Shapeshift was one of the like. I feel like it's just a match made in heaven with THORChain just from the beginning, and a lot of that really ties in with like Shapeshift's origin story of being this centralized company and transitioning to the DAO as it is today. So I kind of want to hear a little bit about the story a little bit because I think that's kind of what captured like as at least my like imagination from the beginning, like hearing the shapeshift story, and then like how Thorchain kind of fits in there, and just the rest of DeFi as well. So like, what shapeshift origin story and how to get to where it is today?
ShapeShift's origin story, I guess it was when our father, Mount Gox, was murdered, basically, and that's when it all began. To your point, ShapeShift, I'm realizing now as you say it, like ShapeShift DAO would not exist if it wasn't for THORChain. So it's a really cool, like you said, intertwined history. And for anyone who's not familiar with ShapeShift's backstory, it was started back in 2014 by Eric Voorhees as one of the first ways to trade crypto non-custodially from your own wallet. And it quickly became the most popular way to trade crypto from your own wallet. And it was started in the wake of Mt. Gox, which was the first exchange to get hacked. And it was where like 80% of Bitcoin was being traded at the time. It was a catastrophic event. And it was the first time that a lot of Bitcoiners really learned the hard way, not your keys, not your crypto. So one of the things that people really loved about ShapeShift was that it was super simple. It was kind of like THORChain is today, but long before THORChain was even conceived, even before the first DEXs, before Ethereum even. This was back in 2014. Back then it was just like Bitcoin and Litecoin. And one of the reasons people loved ShapeShift was that it didn't require any account, and it was super easy. You could just come in, send in Bitcoin, and then put in your address to receive Litecoin. And ShapeShift was very quick to add other new chains and tokens, and everything was going great. ShapeShift, again, processed billions of dollars of volume up until 2018, at which point regulations had evolved and crypto was starting to be recognized as money. And ShapeShift, which was a corporation based in, although it was incorporated in Switzerland, a lot of the team was in the United States, and ShapeShift offered services to United States users. Most of ShapeShift's customers were in the United States. So 2018, ShapeShift's lawyers came to the conclusion that in order to continue operating, ShapeShift would need to start requiring KYC. And so we spent months basically rebuilding the whole system to require accounts. We built out a whole compliance department and started requiring KYC. And sure enough, about 95% of our trade volume left ShapeShift and went on to competitors who had kind of copied the ShapeShift model, but hadn't yet started requiring KYC. So fast forward basically to 2020, ShapeShift had been basically focused on building a platform for hardware wallets such as KeepKeep, which was owned by ShapeShift, but also Ledger, Trezor. It supported Portis as well, which ShapeShift later acquired. So basically a platform that kind of took all the different things ShapeShift had been building, in addition to the market exchange, the market price data, KeepKeep hardware wallet, and married it all into a kind of a platform where you could basically not only trade and manage your portfolio, but also buy and sell crypto. And eventually we started going down the path of enabling DeFi yield as well. So in 2020, we saw the proliferation of DEXs, and we'd also been following THORChain's progress for a while because we were very interested on how somebody could solve this problem and basically achieve the original vision of ShapeShift, but in a way that couldn't be stopped or censored, or where a company like ShapeShift wouldn't be required to collect this information from users that we didn't want to collect and that our users didn't want to give us. So in 2021, January, we integrated 0x to aggregate all of the Ethereum DEXs. And we were basically like, as soon as the day that THORChain launched mainnet in April of 2021, ShapeShift had already been working behind the scenes to develop the integration so that as soon as THORChain network went live, ShapeShift launched our interface to THORChain. And that day we sunset the ShapeShift market exchange that had been running for about 7 years at that point. And we stopped KYCing users. And that was the best day ever. Like I remember it was a terribly dark day at ShapeShift when Eric told the whole company that we would have to require KYC. It was an even darker day a few months later when we actually launched it and announced this to the world. People on like crypto Twitter was pissed. They were like, F you, ShapeShift. You've sold your soul. you guys should just kill yourselves. You should have just closed down. Like, this is terrible. You're the worst. And it sucked because it's like, it's not what we wanted to do. And sometimes, like what Eric said to the company, is that you got to sometimes lose a battle to win the war. And so we're incredibly grateful to THORChain, because when we then came back a few years later and said, hey, guess what? You can now trade Bitcoin and Ethereum on ShapeShift again without any KYC. Crypto Twitter was like, yeah, ShapeShift's back. You guys are awesome. And that was, I know it felt really amazing to like everybody at the company who had stuck around for years and kept fighting the good fight, to basically be able to finally come back to that point and basically like offer the original ShapeShift vision, but even better, thanks to the challenges that THORChain solved, which are incredible challenges that you guys were able to solve. So hopefully I didn't talk too long, but it was a long history over many years there. And yeah, I'll stop there.
No, that was great. It really does put it in perspective for both sides, you know, for ShapeShift users as well as THORChads that aren't familiar with the ShapeShift story. It really helps color like the importance of THORChain today. So I would also urge people to like go back and listen to some of those interviews, like even pre-THORChain, and hear Eric and the team, you know, talking about ShapeShift. Because I would say like not only does like THORChain allow ShapeShift to be where it is today, but it's also hard to say if THORChain would exist as it is today if not for the ShapeShift story. So it really comes together, and yeah, you know, this is it's the best day ever now.
And it's really a story of crypto innovation triumphing over just unnecessary regulations like the Bank Secrecy Act, which required ShapeShift to start collecting KYC because it considered ShapeShift to be the custodian of funds as it's moving cross chain. Because ShapeShift was being a custodian for a brief moment while it swapped Bitcoin to Litecoin or whatever. But then using decentralized infrastructure like THORChain just allows you guys to just pass that off and say, hey, we're not processing these swaps. All we're doing is we're just sending Bitcoin off on the wallet. We're not actually processing any of these swaps. It's THORChain is what is actually like being used here. So these things don't apply to ShapeShift anymore. So it's just like I really like what you said about like losing the battle, but winning the war, because it does seem like we're like as a whole, as an ecosystem, we're in just such a stronger position in having this like big architecture of like front ends of like ShapeShift, THORSwap, like all these front ends, and then the decentralized infrastructure on the back ends, which is allowed to really power these swaps and the things that users really want to do without risk to the front ends themselves, and the real people who are behind these things and believe in them.
To me, it feels like Sabers is now like another example of that, like lose the battle, win the war thing for all of the carnage that came out of the CeFi failures last year with BlockFi and Voyager and Celsius and everything. BlockFi, you could just deposit Bitcoin one-sided and apparently get yield, ultimately get rugged. But now we're getting the same service to users in a decentralized fashion, and the yield is real, and you can see where the yield comes from on chain, and it's auditable, and it's permissionless. It's really cool. 2 years ago it was cross-chain swaps, now it's single-sided yield on otherwise unproductive assets. So it's, to me, I find a real beauty in seeing code solve these problems and catch up to and kind of outstrip regulation, so to speak.
Yeah, it makes me really bullish to see like 5 years ago where we were and where we are today. And so you can just imagine like, how much better things will be, 5 years from now, how much more decentralized infrastructure we'll have, how much more capabilities that, these great builders will be building into their products, not just in THORChain, but all like everything in DeFi, and just building more infrastructure to give to users to really empower them and not, get bogged down in, taking a picture of your face and sending it in before making a swap. Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's so important to see these projects take back the core products of crypto from centralized entities back to crypto. It's like, that's the way that's what the ethos was from the very beginning. And we went through this like dark ages of centralization and all these, regulations when decentralization wasn't ready to skirt around it. And now we're kind of in an era where, okay, trading, we got dexes. You don't need to go to centralized exchanges for that. And then, like you said, BlockFi popped up, gets billions and billions of dollars of Bitcoin, but it's not really a crypto, native app. It's trust based. It's a centralized company, and now you have THORChain savers taking that back too. And something I've been saying for a while is it just feels like THORChain and the broader DeFi community. It's like just going down the list of taking back these most popular products in crypto that became centralized and really fulfilling the original vision. And that's just so crucial to the entire space.
And what's beautiful about sort of the timing on this as decentralized infrastructure gets more built out is everything on the CeFi side of things has only served to highlight the difference. And of course, people outside the space or regulators and politicians maybe don't really have a keen sense of this yet. But like what a stunning contrast after the the meltdown of Celsius and the centralized lenders and then of course FTX. Like everything we're collectively building in this space is built on this, on these transparent foundations. Like DeFi mentioned, all these yields are auditable and the code is auditable on THORChain and Savers vaults. Of course, at the DAO, our transparency or our finances are 100% transparent. We have these wonderful dashboards, or what we call dashboards, that people can see, in real time. Like, okay, what is the status of their finances? When I say we have 9 months of runway, well, people can audit that themselves and see that for themselves. And like I think as time goes on, the one thing we can say with certainty is there will continue to be giant clusterfucks on the centralized side of things. Like the FTX was a pretty stunning example, but there will still be centralized exchanges being hacked. There will be governments doing overreaching on things and causing their citizens to choose riskier alternatives like FTX. And it's just really cool to kind of like be building in a space where it really feels like we're all in this together. I've never really gotten the sense of like, oh, we're competing with XYZ. It's like, even if like provider is like doing something in the same market segment or vertical, it's like at the end of the day, man, we're all building these tools for freedom and these decentralized tools that will remedy many of the problems we have right now. It's just that the rest of the world hasn't caught on to this yet.
Yeah, adding on to that, one of the things that we say a lot in these spaces, it's not, decentralized protocol A versus, protocol B. It's really, centralized versus decentralized. And I think it's clear like what direction everything is trending toward. Like, yeah, you can look up pretty much any metric. You can see that things are trending towards DeFi and towards decentralization, towards DAOs and towards these decentralized groups of people that want to build open source projects and have other people build on top of them, and it just makes the foundation rock solid, because there's no central point of failure. And then if something like THORChain were to fail, everything is open source in the backend. Someone can fork it and continue in the spirit of THORChain and using the principles, building upon whatever has failed. So it's like even the failures in the decentralized space, there's lessons to be learned there, and it's easy to build upon that because everything is built from open source code, right? Everything's auditable, everything's able to be viewed and just easily dissected and built upon. I also brought up Gomes here. Sorry. Hey, Gomes.
Yeah, no worries. Jim THORChain, can you hear me? Jim Swagfam, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Jim Gummy.
Yeah. So Jimo, just wanted to introduce myself. So I'm Gomes, did integration on THORChain savers. But like without talking as a developer, just want to say like how happy it makes me to see this integration of savers and also like the integration of Thor swaps, and we already have integrated. And I perfectly agree. This fits like the original ShapeShift vision and just like a bit of history. Like I joined ShapeShift when it was already decentralized. So I joined as a contributor to the DAO. It's not something that would obviously have been possible as I'm not in the United States, and when it was centralized, that's something that was not possible. And I think this really like this interoperability with like all these DeFi protocols, the fact that as an individual contributor, I can just come and build and can just come and integrate like any protocol you want. Everything is open source, everything is interoperable. That's really matching the original ShapeShift vision, which is one of the first products that introduced me to crypto. And back then, you could swap. There was basically no DeFi. You could not even earn yield on any asset, native or not native. It's really great to see that nowadays, with THORChain, with savers, with THORSwap, you can swap with DeFi. You can now earn yield with DeFi. And yeah, I mean, I think that really lines up with our vision. It's really the same vision that we have at ShapeShift, and it's really interesting to see how we're just coming back to the original product, but with DeFi building blocks these days. So yeah, really fun to build and really matching our ethos. So yeah.
I have to ask one thing. So what was your experience like? So you were the one that actually implemented savers with ShapeShift. What was your experience like doing that? Did you think it was an easy process? And yeah, just I want to hear a little bit about just how it was for you actually, doing the work, putting it in there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say that it's really it's the continuity as what we've been doing with THORSwaps. So we might be biased there because we already have a bit of experience with THORChain, and so we know a bit of the underlyings already. But savers was something new for us. So all we had was effectively this like one docs page, and it really was all we needed. I mean, the API, was all very clear. Gave us all we needed. Whenever we had a bit of friction here and there on that. One issue with the API, it was super quick to get an answer to see if there was like an issue upstream, or if there's something that we did wrong. Aridanis was super helpful in helping us that way. So I would say that overall we really didn't have much friction. Like everything was clear, and you guys made a really stunning job at making us able to integrate you. I would say that, yeah, like on the doc side, like every product, like every repo, there's always things to be done on the doc side to make things better for developers to integrate. I don't know if you guys are open source on that part of the product, but could be nice to contribute there.
Yeah, the docs are all open source. But it's good to hear that you had a good experience actually implementing it, because I mean that's the end goal of THORChain, is to be in the back end of all of these products like ShapeShift and every other open source front end that really wants to use decentralized infrastructure. So sorry, that was just a curiosity of mine, just seeing how it was for you guys. But I'm glad to hear things worked out well.
Want to give a big shout out to Eridanis lurking down there in the audience at Nine Realms, who's super responsive and absolute Chad, and helped us out with some tiny bugs on THORChain side and getting answers to us really quickly and helping us dashboards and clarifications and everything. There was one or two little hairy bits with UTXO coins, but that's not THORChain's fault. We're really abusing the limits of what those coins can do. But yeah, Eridanis is an absolute champion with helping us out there. So huge thanks.
Cool. So maybe we should talk a bit about the actual product of Savers and what it is and how it works a bit. So yeah, let's get into that. So I mean, I guess we should start off by saying like what actual chains THORChain supports itself. So the actual chains that THORChain supports, it's all these are the native chains, obviously, as probably a lot of people in here know. So that's Bitcoin, Ethereum, Binance Beacon chain, not Smart Chain. Avalanche C Chain, the Cosmos Hub, so that's Atom, Dogecoin, Bitcoin Cash, and Litecoin. So all of those vaults are now available on ShapeShift. And the user experience is actually very, very simple. All you need to do is connect your wallet to ShapeShift. So I guess that's your ShapeShift wallet or XDeFi or whatever else you use on ShapeShift, and you just send the coins into the vault, and it's actually just that simple to deposit. Like obviously there's a lot more that goes on in the back end of things and how things are accounted, but the actual Savers feature is very simple in itself, where it's just you take your Bitcoin, you send it to the vault. Some fees get taken out on addition and when you withdraw, so be mindful of that. Definitely read the documentation before you deposit anything and do your research before you do anything. But the actual user process of adding to the Savers Vault, and which is basically becoming a liquidity provider, a type of liquidity provider on THORChain, which is meant to be lower risk and very, very simple to use. And for users that want a low cognitive burden of, hey, I'm just going to deposit, not worry about impermanent loss or anything like that. I'm just going to deposit my assets, and then every time there's a swap on THORChain, just a portion of that gets deposited into your position, and then you can withdraw anytime. So I think that's kind of the basics of Savers Vaults. Anything that I didn't touch on there?
No, I think you covered it. Yeah, I'm curious how you guys thought about UI and just the designing of how your users will interact with it. Obviously, as Kao said, it is so simple. There's not really a lot required, but yeah, maybe walk us through just like the design thinking. Like, are there warnings or explanations of like how you break down the slip fees and tracking your positions? Yeah, just how did you guys think through the designing of that?
I'll try and speak to this. We actually had our designer lurking in the audience for a little bit. I won't dox him and bring him up, but we've kind of got a consistent way of thinking about what we call opportunities. So because we've got many other integrations like Yearn and Idle Finance and Cosmos validators and Osmosis validators and things like that, we have a consistent way of approaching these, which we call opportunities. So that might be like providing liquidity with, 2 assets into an LP token, or single-sided staking into some sort of EVM protocol, or single-sided staking into a Savers Vault. So our product team had put a lot of work into thoughts around that. It's kind of a 3-step thing where you've got like an overview screen where you can see. We also support multiple accounts for every chain, so you can see like which account that you're dealing with for a particular asset. And you can see like, what you've got in each of your accounts and their positions in particular opportunities like Savers. Then we just got a deposit screen with some pretty straightforward, like, 25, 50, 75, 100% buttons. And then on the THORChain stuff specifically, we have a little bit more info, first around the risks, which you guys did an amazing job of explaining in the Medium article. I want to stress that it's not a risk-free thing. There are risks associated with this, but they're pretty straightforward and well communicated. So we've got the explainer of that, and then showing the caps of the vaults at the moment. Sadly, the Bitcoin one's pretty full, so guys, please go and provide liquidity so that the synth ratio goes up and we can deposit more Bitcoin. But then, yeah, pretty straightforward deposit step. There's a little bit of kind of technical complexity, especially with Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin and stuff, but Gomes did an amazing job of hiding that kind of complexity away with 2 transactions that get sent behind the scenes sort of thing. And then like the withdrawal process shows you the same thing in reverse basically. And we've also got when you deposit showing the days it'll take to pay off your deposit fees as well. So if you are depositing a small amount just to play around with, always a good idea to do that, but it'll show you a really long time to pay that back, obviously. But if you're depositing sort of a normal, reasonable amount, it won't be too long.
Yeah, that's a great feature. And just so people understand that, that's because the larger single-sided deposit you make, the more slippage there is. That's just how THORChain fees work. They scale up like that. So in a lot of cases, you're better off splitting it into some smaller deposits if you're trying to do a large size. But yeah, that's a great feature to kind of show the estimated break-even period. That's great.
Yeah, it's one of those really good also, UX features. Oh, sorry, Gomes, you go.
No worries. Yeah, I was also going to say one more thing on the UX side, which is also something that we really try to make clear, is how we handle basically like ongoing TXs like TX history. That's something that can be extremely confusing for users. I mean, I can't count the number of times I just use DApp, any DApp, and you make your TX and you call a smart contract. The app will tell you, like, you have a TX ongoing, this is happening. And then you refresh, and then you will see nothing, and it can be extremely scary as users. And so that's something that at ShapeShift we have the architecture to do. I mean, we have our own nodes without going to too many technical details. Like, that's something that we know how to do. You can refresh, you'll still see your TX history. And so we also try to make it, or like to remove really the scary points out of it, and really making clear for users, especially for UTXers, that can be quite long to confirm that yes, they have something ongoing to savers, and they have a deposit, they have a withdraw that's ongoing, and that basically everything is just is fine, like it's just long. There's definitely room for improvements. Like, we have product that have ideas on how to make that even more explicit. But yeah, the main idea is like make it clear for users, like something is happening. Your THORChain server's deposit, THORChain server's withdraw is happening, and your funds are not lost. Things are not working. Everything is working as it should, just long. So yeah, that's the element that we also wanted to make explicit. Like, something's happening, don't be scared.
Cool. One of the other things I wanted to go into a bit is about the caps, because I'm sure people have questions about why is there a cap on the Savers vaults, and when are the caps going to be raised? So let me take a minute and address all that. So the caps on each Savers vault is a proportion of how much liquidity there is in dual-sided liquidity. So since the beginning of THORChain, all liquidity has been two-sided. So liquidity provider provides both Rune, the native asset of THORChain, and Bitcoin, or whatever other native asset. But I'll use Bitcoin for all these examples. So because Savers vaults use synthetic assets for their accounting, so you deposit native assets, but that native asset is converted into a synthetic asset, and that's how your position is accounted in THORChain. And then obviously when you withdraw, it gets converted back to a native asset. But because of the way synthetic assets work, there is a limit to how much synthetic assets can safely be minted on the network. So synthetic assets are backed by these dual liquidity providers, and synthetic assets are also a type of liquidity on the network, where if the Rune Bitcoin price moves up, then those dual-sided LPs see an asymmetric gain, while if the Rune BTC price goes down, they see an asymmetric loss. So it's a type of leverage on these dual-sided LPs, where the higher the synthetic asset utilization ratio, the more synths are minted for the pool, the more leverage is basically placed on these dual LPs. So in like a Rune downturn scenario, they see more loss, where in a Rune upward scenario, they see more gain. So that's why there's some kind of limit on the amount that can be actually placed in the pools itself. Right now, it's 30% of the total liquidity in the pool. So, if the pool is 100 million, then 30 million can be in synthetic assets, which includes all of the savers positions, and synths are also used for arbitrage on THORChain. So that's why there is a limit. And the answer to when the synth caps will be raised, the answer is not yet, and there really isn't a reason to raise it yet. I know people obviously want to deposit and get that, about 4% APR on their native Bitcoin, because obviously that there's nowhere else in anywhere to do that in a decentralized way. So, but we don't just need Bitcoin liquidity on THORChain. We need Ethereum liquidity. We're doing all this DEX aggregation. We need more liquidity in the Ether pool to get better prices and swap using Uniswap and things like that. Like, there needs to be more liquidity for not just Bitcoin, but for everything else. So the caps aren't being raised yet, and the team is still discussing like the best way to just handle the situation and make sure that things are done safely without breaking anything, because obviously that would be bad. The team wants to move slow and carefully, but we also need liquidity on all these other assets too, which is why like it's totally fine that ShapeShift is launching into is launching Savers vaults into a mostly full Bitcoin vault, because we really do need liquidity. We need Doge liquidity. We need AVAX liquidity. We need all the liquidity that we can get to have the best price execution possible. And the more liquidity that gets into the network, like Chad was saying before, slip-based fees are based on how deep the pool is and what your deposit size is. So the more liquidity that's in the network, the better trading fees are, which means trading fees are going to be better when you're trading on ShapeShift. You're trading Bitcoin to Litecoin, and the Litecoin pool is 5 times deeper. You're going to be paying a lot less slippage for each trade. So being a liquidity provider for THORChain is just another way to contribute towards the success of the network, bring prices down for swappers, which hopefully we should see increased volume, and the flywheel continues to go that way. So definitely consider that this is not just a Bitcoin product, although that is one of the most attractive things about THORChain Savers. It's for everything. There's also nowhere else to earn native Doge. Nowhere else to earn native Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash. Like all these things, that they're all available on THORChain Savers. So I just want to call that out there and just give the reasoning for the caps and explanation there.
Yeah, the space in the ETH pool is looking pretty attractive. People should definitely take a look at that. Also, there is one other way that cap space can increase, and that's the Rune price itself. And Rune is, of course, a bet on the adoption of these features, because they're all inherently like tied to the adoption just through its clever tokenomics. And if, hypothetically, not financial advice, if Rune starts going up because the market comes around to that alone frees up a lot of cap space, because the Rune price going up is deepening the total pool, such that the Bitcoin, for example, is a smaller percentage of the total pool. And that's what the synth cap percentage is. So if Rune is outperforming, then there's more and more space available for native single-sided Bitcoin deposits or any of the other assets. And that's really the safest way to scale Savers. As Cow said, a lot of things are being discussed as far as raising to 50% and protocol and liquidity and all of these things that are still being discussed. But a really ideal scenario would just be that fingers crossed, if Rune performs well, then that can potentially just continue to scale it with its current parameters.
Right, and that's just what's happening right now. Like if you see Rune increases versus Bitcoin, you'll see cap space free up, and you'll see that 100% tick down to 99, 98, and that can go down indefinitely just based on the Rune Bitcoin price and whatever price that's at currently. So right now, we don't know when the caps are going to be raised, so to speak. It's right now it's a function of the market and not over leveraging the dual LPs, and we'll see how it goes from here. And if definitely consider becoming a dual-sided LP. That's not at all the same as being a Savers LP, but that's the only other way to increase the space in the Savers as well. So just wanted to call that out there. Yeah, so ShapeShift and Savers, do you guys have your own dashboard for like viewing your position and how much how much it's grown over like the past however many days you've been in there, and just like a way to see like the analytics of your deposit?
Yeah, we kind of got two things coming on that side. So one is like a continuation. So we got the base functionality launched with what we think is pretty good user experience as is. Based on some of the feedbacks we got from Nine Realms, from other people that have implemented Savers and what they'd like to see. We've got a bunch of improvements there, like showing how close that you are to paying off your original slippage and things like that. And then more broadly, we've got like a kind of display DeFi positions thing going on at the moment. So the whole kind of DeFi section of the app is going to get a big revamp and overhaul. So you'll be able to see things like broken down by asset or position. So, for example, if you had ETH, you could have that deposited into multiple things. And one of those could be a savers vault, and then you could see like the rewards that have accrued since your initial deposit. Then we're going to do it by protocol as well, like by opportunity. So that would again show you like by savers instead. And then by chain as well. So we've got both generalized product things coming and more like THORChain savers specific stuff to be able to see some of that more nicer analytics. And then like Eridanus is helping us at the moment on a DAO level to try and get some metrics for how much we've driven to the protocol.
The display DeFi positions is going to be really awesome. It's a feature that we've been super excited about at ShapeShift for a long time. And it's worth noting that we just got to parity basically and completed that migration back in October. So pretty much the first year and a half of the DAO's existence was primarily focused on rebuilding the existing legacy centralized ShapeShift app and open sourcing it and architecting it for complete decentralization. And that took quite a while. Now that we're past that, we can start focusing on new features. THORChain Savers was one of the top features that we were super excited to add. And one of the next ones is displaying DeFi positions. We're super excited to have the THORChain Savers vaults as one of those DeFi positions that we'll be able to display. And we are hoping to be able to do just as good of a job as Zapper and Zerion currently do with displaying the DeFi positions for any user who has positions in DeFi. As many of you guys know, it's kind of hard to get a comprehensive view of your portfolio. And I think Zerion and Zapper both do a great job of showing those DeFi positions. But as many of you guys know, they're EVM focused and they're missing out on the rest of your portfolio. So, and even just being able to see like your Bitcoin balance or your Doge balance alongside your DeFi positions. So we see that as like a big problem that still needs to be solved, and in a really great position to address that with ShapeShift's kind of core focus as being multi-chain support and killer UX and aggregating these protocols. So
yeah, that's actually one of the things we've noticed with a lot of like conversations that we're having with other like potential integrators is so many of these apps they really just want to just exist in EVM, and just the lift of integrating Bitcoin and like every other UTXO chain is just like it seems like they just don't really want to do it because it's just too much work. It's too much to refactor everything that they've done and make Bitcoin fit into it, which is what's special about ShapeShift, and probably like what a lot of your users use ShapeShift for is to get that cross ecosystem availability. Just being able to use Bitcoin and then be on EVM and enter a Urine vault or the Ethereum Savers vault or whatever. Like having the cross chain compatibility. I think that's where you guys really excel and where your competitive advantage is, because you guys aren't blind to the fact that there exist things outside of EVM.
On the technical side of things, yeah, that's not an easy thing to do. We've got an open source library called HD Wallet, which a lot of people have used, and that implements like a variety of wallets. So that's how we're able to support like MetaMask and XDeFi, hardware wallets like KeepKey as well, and our own native software wallet, and all kind of expose that all the way through the app. We've done a lot of work around like, I guess what we call like families of chains. So like we can treat like all of the UTXO coins the same. We can treat the Cosmos SDK coins the same, the EVM coins the same. But yeah, that's it's not an easy thing to do. And I guess like non-technical folks don't appreciate the amount of work that's gone into that to make it just that from a user's perspective, such a seamless experience. We often get really funny questions from like the EVM gang when they come and integrate. It's like, oh, how do I pick the active network for the native wallet? And it's like, you don't. It's just they're all active at the same time. Like how do I pick Bitcoin to sign a Bitcoin transaction? You just sign it. But yeah, we've put a lot of work into those cross-chain abstractions when we rebuilt this new app from the ground up. So it's in a really healthy place now to start, just adding more and more of these integrations.
Yeah, that's the one thing that we're pushing for a lot. And we think that's where the space is going to go. Like it's clear that Bitcoin isn't going anywhere, And as maxis kind of huddle into their holes, the people that really expand outwardly and gain users from other ecosystems and have the best user experience cross chain and provide that centralized experience, but in a decentralized way, those are the ones that are really going to win over the long term. And that's where that war that we were talking about, that's where it's going to be won, is giving that great user experience in the decentralized way, I think. So like, huge kudos to you guys for understanding that. And obviously that's like where the huge synergy of THORChain and ShapeShift come in, and where a lot of people don't see the value in THORChain. They say, oh well, why don't you just use this EVM bridge? And yeah, it's so simple. Just lock it up in a smart contract and just use a wrapped asset. Like why bother with any of this cross chain stuff? I mean, it is sad. You hate to see it, but that's just the way that a lot of these other companies and even decentralized organizations think of things.
The no wrapping thing is really important as well. Like I see this on Twitter, especially like when Eric tweets all the time. It's like, oh, wasn't this like wrapped or bridged or whatever? It's like, yeah, seeing Renbridge recently, I think it's like last month, have a hard deadline on a shutdown. They're centralized. You wrap your stuff, your Bitcoin into Ren BTC, and yeah, sure, you can go like add to a ETH, Ren BTC liquidity pool or wrap BTC, but that's not the case with THORChain. Yeah, the Asgard vaults are native assets with 10-to-mint threshold signatures, and native Bitcoin goes in and native Bitcoin comes out. There's no wrapping, there's no trust there. The protocol's auditable. I really think that the being able to do it natively is a key advantage that people still aren't fully grasping.
No, but I think they'll see the success of THORChain and obviously ShapeShift, and whatever front ends are doing the best job, and especially the ones that are thinking about this really from the first principles and saying like where are the users and what are their needs, rather than just saying oh yeah, you're a Bitcoiner, oh well, go use your Bitcoin wallet, and then come to us when you really want to talk, and you just leave that all behind. There needs to be a more unified ecosystem and unified push. As I said before, it's a fight of decentralized versus centralized, not Bitcoin versus Ethereum and all this stuff. We don't need to worry about that anymore. And I don't think people have really. I mean, most people have not seen that light yet. But we're fighting the fight.
Yeah, it's ironic that a lot of the maxis out there prior to all the CeFi meltdown, they were saying, well, don't do anything like using THORChain. Just use like a centralized lender, and then look what happened. But I think we're seeing this like wonderful convergence of a few factors here that are going to lead to like much more adoption of truly decentralized, or of DeFi, because on one hand you have new financial primitives like Savers Vault, and then on the other hand you have what ShapeShift and others are trying to do in terms of we used to have this saying at centralized ShapeShift, make it fucking easy, like really just do everything we can to remove those frictions and make it understandable. And I think Savers Vaults really so much helps move in that direction, because it's much easier to just explain like the single-sided approach to somebody who maybe isn't as sophisticated and crypto native. Just deposit whatever, really one of many tokens from different chains into this thing, and you can see this yield over time. You don't have to worry about a lot of other factors, the impermanent loss stuff and all that. Of course, yeah, there's slippage, but that's a concept familiar to anybody who's even traded stocks. And at the same time, the multi-chain stuff, the chain agnostic stuff, just opens that door to a wider horizon, or a wider pool of potential users. And it's also, it feels very future-proof to do that, because there's going to be a proliferation of new VM chains with rollups. The Cosmos space, of course, is just probably going to be having a Cambrian explosion in the next year or so. So it just feels like the perfect nexus and combination of things coming together that is just going to explode in an exponential way over the next months and years, I think.
On the topic of LPing with THORChain as well, we did a lot of work around, like I was mentioning, like how we think about all of these different cross-chain yield opportunities as opportunities. And so like we had to support our own liquidity pool on Uniswap, and we built this really nice abstraction around it. So it's going to be reasonably easy for us to implement THORChain LPing. The reason we went with Savers first is just it's such an easy product to understand. Yeah, you don't have to worry about the impermanent loss, even though there was that impermanent loss protection, which is kind of phasing out. But it's just the more user-friendly way to dip your toe into native yield. And there's nothing stopping us from doing the LP later, which would, I guess, also help raise the caps as well on the Savers vaults. So that might be coming down the path soon as well for us.
Yeah, that's great to see. Yeah, dual LPs are really the bread and butter of THORChain, but it's the highest cognitive burden because there's impermanent loss to worry about. Which by the way, there's only a few days left of impermanent loss protection. So if you add to a THORChain dual-sided liquidity position before I believe the estimated date is Monday. It's block 9.45 million, which means nothing to anybody here. But I believe that's like Monday at around like 8 p.m. Eastern. So if you do add to a dual LP position over the weekend, for example, that you would be protected against impermanent loss with THORChain's permanent loss protection. If you do it afterwards, or if you add to a current position after that, you lose your protection. So be aware of that and just know that this is like the last couple of days to add with impermanent loss protection. I mean, so yeah, just one call out there, which I almost forgot to say before. So that is a good thing to mention. But obviously, like things like Uniswap, they don't have impermanent loss protection, and that's not really a factor there. And the reason it's being getting rid of is because of Savers vaults, and it's just not really necessary to offer this anymore because we have this new way to provide liquidity without risk of impermanent loss protection. So it's just a cognitively easier way to do it without worrying about, oh, if Rune goes up too much, then I'm selling my strong asset into the weak asset in this pool, and I face some IL here, there's synths, and just makes it so much easier.
Another feature that I'm excited about that I think we should look at on the roadmap.
So maybe we should let up some of the community for questions. I think there's some people that have been requesting.
I don't know if you couldn't hear Willie. I don't. Maybe Twitter is doing that thing, but yeah, Willie, go ahead.
Yeah,
I'll let you know when we can go to questions soon, right after this, maybe.
Thank you, Chad. Appreciate that. Yeah, I just wanted to note we've been looking at some user feedback we've had recently, and so a lot of users kind of expect to be able to trade Bitcoin for any ERC20 on ShapeShift, and we don't yet support that, but would love to. So I think another feature that we need to look at soon is THORChain's new DEX aggregation feature that enables basically any of the routes that you guys support across chain to then also have a secondary swap transaction into the DEXs on Ethereum or EVM networks. So yeah, just wanted to throw that out there as another really compelling feature that our users have been requesting and even actually expecting lately that we don't yet have support for, and that THORChain is probably the best provider of.
Yeah, I think aggregation really is huge. Maybe time for a little chat between ShapeShift and THORSwap, see if something's there. But yeah, aggregation would definitely like expand that feature set, and also even ties into what you guys were saying about how a lot of these projects are just looking at EVM. Well, the more that you have those aggregation routes available, it kind of you can like bridge that gap for them, even if they're not really like understanding or seeing the importance. If it's readily available, within ShapeShift or other apps and stuff like that, then it's like, well, it's right there for you, and and users are going to use it. So whether people in the leadership positions understand it or not, the users are gonna go for those routes if they're there.
And that links into linking together all of the DeFi applications just across the whole ecosystem, linking together Uniswap and 0x, 1inch, everything. And it's going to make the UX so much better. It's like lower fees for everybody. That's what's going to give people the centralized experience, because not all liquidity is going to exist on THORChain. The biggest THORChain is and probably always will be, I hope, the best UTXO liquidity, the highest Bitcoin liquidity, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, everything like that. But everything else, it's going to exist elsewhere, and we need to embrace that and fight for all of the decentralized protocols that exist.
Absolutely. Cool. Should we bring people up for questions? If people want to start requesting, feel free to hit the request, and we'll hit a few questions before we wrap up. Kingfish is connecting here.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
I can, but I don't know if that means anything.
Okay, that's great. Hey, I have a question that ties into being an LP provider. I put up several LP positions about close to a year ago under the impression that there is ILP protection. Whenever I check on Thor yield, what I see doesn't really mesh with what my understanding was. I put in ETH in three different positions, and on each of them, I'm quite down on my ETH, anywhere between 30 and 40%. Now, the way I understood the concept was when I put ETH in, I put it in asymmetrically, that half of it gets changed into Rune or traded into Rune, and then I have Rune ETH position. Now, Rune, right after I added these positions, crashed quite significantly against ETH, so I'm down on that. Now, if I look at the protection that I get, that doesn't make up the difference of what I put in. So I'm literally down like 30 to 40%. Am I misunderstanding the concept?
So you're correct that it's split when you put it in, and that is the snapshot for your ILP protection. So, if you put in 1 ETH, then your protection is really, and I'm simplifying, leaving out some fees, but it's really 0.5 ETH and the equivalent amount of Rune at that time. And that's the snapshot that you're protected against. So then after your 100 days, your full protection, what is withdrawable is equivalent to that snapshot. It's not necessarily the exact split because the values of the two coins move separately, but the total withdrawable should be equivalent value to, in this example, the 0.5 ETH and the amount of Rune from that initial snapshot. So not sure if that clears up your situation.
Yeah, sorry. Part of this is also because if you enter asymmetrically with one asset, you can only withdraw that asset. So because you entered ETH and then ETH outperformed Rune, you're essentially selling ETH to buy Rune. But since you can't actually withdraw that Rune, you can only withdraw the ETH, and so that's why. So the IL protection works as intended. It's just this is part of the complexity of dual-sided LPs, especially asymmetric dual LPs, which is just way too much to get into here. But it's just the nature. Basically, I mean, you pick the wrong side of the trade, where you pick the outperforming asset, which is sold in an LP position for the underperforming asset, and you can only withdraw the asset that you deposited. So that's the ETH, which outperformed, which you've sold for the Rune, which you can't withdraw the Rune. So sorry to hear about that, but sorry. Hopefully that cleared up the complexity there.
Well, I thought the idea of ILP IL protection is that when I want to withdraw, the difference of my loss gets made up from the Rune pool. Is that not correct?
So that's correct, but it's from the 50-50 starting point. So you're not protected on the 1 ETH in the example that I was saying. You're protected against the 0.5 ETH and whatever amount of Rune that was at the time that you entered. So then when you withdraw, you're getting, if you're doing asymmetric, it gets super complicated. But yeah, you're withdrawing a value of ETH equivalent to 0.5 ETH plus that quantity of Rune, but in ETH terms. But yeah, like Kao was saying, I mean, this is exactly why these features are kind of not necessarily fully being deprecated, but not going to be the focus, because without ILP and with Savers vaults, pretty much there's almost no reason for people to be doing asymmetric LPing moving forward unless they're a really advanced user and really understand exactly what they're doing. But Yeah, sorry that that this stuff has been, we've been trying our best over years to like explain these things, and people, it just was really complicated, and that's why it's just like time to kind of change it. But yeah, if you need more help understanding it, like, whichever interface you kind of are using, if that was THORyield, maybe it was THORSwap or whoever else, you could definitely like jump in Discord chat, tickets, LP University, get some help understanding exactly what went down, and make sure everything's adding up as it should be.
All right, so then that means to me, really, after 100 days, I still don't have the protection. I understand that the asset gets split, but if one outperforms, then the other one should be substituted so you do not have the loss. But that doesn't seem to happen. So I guess
it's not as you understand it, but it's working. It's as intended and as described, but it might not be as you understand it. So
yeah,
sorry.
I think the confusion is just that it's from the 50-50 start point. It's not from the single start point. So I'm sure if we dug into the math of your position, it's working as intended. It's just you're not protected from a single asset deposit, which is why savers exist now, and it's awesome, right? But okay. Yeah, so an asymmetric deposit is exactly the same as a symmetric deposit. Obviously, I'm simplifying. There's a little bit of slippage and stuff like that. But essentially, when you deposited asymmetric, you're really depositing the two sides, half and half, and that's your snapshot. So it's not the one ETH; it's the two assets. So yeah, again, if you need more help, kind of like digging into it, if you want to even like share the position and like break down the numbers, I'm sure you could do that in various Discords and tickets.
Mm-hmm. So all I can do is basically wait for Rune to outperform ETH to get even. Basically, is that right?
That's right. I mean, when you're asymmetric from ETH, yeah, you're essentially taking a trade that Rune is going to outperform ETH.
Correct.
Yeah. So and because that has not been the case, that's why you're down in ETH terms.
Got it. Okay. Well, hopefully we'll make that happen in the future.
That's what we're here for, man.
Okay.
sorry about that.
Fingers crossed. Okay. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks. Yeah. Anyone else that wants to come up and questions about ShapeShift or THORChain or Sabers?
I got a question for you guys. So I'm just curious, like what's been the most difficult area of decentralizing as a front end, or like areas that you still see the most room to proceed in decentralizing? Because you guys, I mean, yeah, you're using decentralized backends, but you have an app on the App Store, you have US users, so I'm just curious, like what are the biggest difficulties in that process, and like the biggest hurdles you've overcome, and what you're still kind of like trying to tackle?
On the technical side, it's really difficult because we do have a backend, but it's very minimal at the moment. We call it Unchained, so we run our own nodes. So we've got nodes for every chain, including THORChain, and then we have a very thin what we call Unchained, our chain indexing service in front of that. So that gives us like current account balances plus transaction history plus WebSockets for transactions, and then access to broadcast transactions via the node as well. But it is really tricky. Like we can't do things like order books, for example. We can't, track a lot of historical things. We have to do everything client side. So on the technical side, that's really difficult. But I think one of the most exciting things coming down the track, which is going to be massive for the space in general, is Archeo, which is another chain that we're launching soon. There's a rolling airdrop snapshot that's ongoing at actually. So the intent of Archeo is very similar to what THORChain has done, but decentralizing access to node data. So imagine, like a lot of people use Infura or things like Alchemy for access to EVM nodes as like basically nodes as a service. The problem there is trust, right? We saw this around post tornado with a lot of like EVM nodes being OFAC compliant or not. Or being forced to either run your own bare metal stuff, which is, despite all of the progress in the light client space, it's still not easy to do for end users. And so what Archeo is going to do is give you access to decentralized node data. And this is not just for the EVM networks, this is going to be for whatever node that a node operator wants to provide. So basically being able to query for all of that data. So yeah, your current balances, your transaction history, being able to broadcast to nodes in a very similar way that THORChain does with, nodes churning in and out and things like that. So having decentralized access to node data in a trustless, way that's distributed as well is a massive step for the space, because there's really a huge choke point at the moment between the dApps like we are. We're very, very heavy on the client side, and these robust protocols like THORChain. THORChain is one of the examples where you can talk to a variety of nodes already, which is great. But a lot of these other dApps, have that choke point of Infura or Alchemy, where you can just sort of be turned off or censored or denied or blocked in particular countries. So, that's something that's coming down the path for us, that the ShapeShift DAO has been funding, but will be its own Cosmos SDK chain soon. Check out Archeo Network if you're interested in more info about that.
And I believe Chad Barford is kind of helping with the architecture of the actual network itself.
Indeed, he is. Yeah, he's leading development there. We've got a few of our Fox Foundation, so some former Foxes, and DAO members contributing to that. So, big shout out to Chad. Made some tremendous progress already on the foundation of Archeo Network.
Chad is an absolute Chad. We could not have hoped for a better lead developer for Archeo than Chad. And also worth mentioning that there is an airdrop for THORChain liquidity providers as part of the Archeo launch. So I just linked a tweet to that in this Twitter Space tweet. So all THORChain liquidity providers between November 28th and 30 days prior to the launch of Archeo, which is currently tentatively scheduled for Q2 of this year. So there's still time to, if you're not already providing liquidity, to qualify for this airdrop. And really excited about this, because once this goes live, as DeFi mentioned, Archeo is basically like a decentralized Infura for all the chains that ShapeShift supports. And right now, the only remaining piece of ShapeShift's centralized backend is this node infrastructure. So when Archeo goes live, the front end of ShapeShift is already decentralized on IPFS. When Archeo goes live, and I guess once we're confident that it's reliable and stable, eventually it will replace this slim remaining centralized backend that ShapeShift has. And at that point, the ShapeShift app will be fully decentralized and unstoppable. So we're super excited about that. And not only will Archeo be powering ShapeShift's backend, but any interface, any application that wants to be truly decentralized and not run their own nodes or rely on a centralized node provider, such as THORSwap or any other interface, will be able to tap into Archeo. So really looking forward to that. And one other thing I should mention, if any THORChain validators are on the call, that will also be an airdrop for THORChain validators. And we're really hoping that, I think a lot of the initial validator set will be these existing THORChain node operators who have a lot of experience, not only operating Cosmos style validators, but also already run nodes for all the different chains that THORChain and ShapeShift supports. And this will be like another way for them to monetize their existing node infrastructure. So onward to complete decentralization.
Yeah, that's amazing. Really excited to learn more and hear the progress on Archeo. I mean, just tackling another layer of the stack and decentralizing it. So that's super important. One question I'm sure people are having on the airdrop. So liquidity providers, is that going to include savers?
That will include savers, and I'm so grateful that you asked for a little bit more clarification, because I should mention that it's not necessarily every pool. It is most pools, but I think the BNB assets might not be included. I need to look, and you can find all the details linked from the proposal that specified this. But we can only do the airdrop for chains that basically we're going to be doing this airdrop on Archeo, so it'll be an IBC token. We're also going to be rewarding users for Ethereum activity. So let me real quick, I can just grab the list of pools that will be included. It is, of course, if you LP THORChain, or if you did any symmetrical liquidity providing, we will be able to reward you for that. Also the AVAX pools, Cosmos pools, and then any of the ERC20 pools will be included. The BNB pools, and potentially any others that I'm not thinking of that aren't part of that list, will not be included, simply because we won't be airdropping on those networks. And we need to basically be able to see either your Cosmos address or your THORChain address or your Ethereum address in order to be able to include those accounts in the airdrop.
Right, that makes sense. So for like a UTXO, like Bitcoin savers, the problem is just like you can't actually get their address, right? I mean, I assume that's why the problem like is even an issue in the first place.
Exactly. And like potentially there could be ways to do it. It just gets very complex, and the airdrop was already getting complex enough that we had to draw the line somewhere. And yeah, I didn't want to necessarily go through all the hoops we'd have to support those additional chains. But yeah, for if you did provide liquidity symmetrically and you provide LP, Rune, and BTC, you would be included. If you just did the BTC savers vaults, you would not be included.
Cool. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, again, really excited to see updates on Archeo. Looks like no more questions in the queue, and I think Cow is being rugged. So do you guys have any final thoughts, any things we didn't touch on that you want to cover? Then we'll wrap up.
I loved what Cal said earlier about just imagining where we'll be in 5 years. I love to think about that, and I think like in 5 years, I really hope, I think we're all going to make it, and I think that at that point, like DeFi will just be so much better than centralized finance in every way, shape, and form. It'll be more trustless, more battle tested, and to Cal's earlier point, we'll have more liquidity because at that point, people will realize that it's just safer and there's real highly competitive yield. So I get super excited about that, and we can be fully decentralized at that point too, and fully unstoppable. We're not there yet. Certainly, we were not there 5 years ago, but it wasn't even possible 5 years ago, and we've come so far. So yeah, I'm excited, and it's kudos to all the builders on this call that are coordinating to solve some really, really huge challenges to make this dream from years ago actually become a reality. So really grateful to be building alongside all of y'all.
Yeah, I love it. And like we were saying earlier, it's all the same team. It's DeFi versus the centralized world, and THORChain, THORSwap, ShapeShift, all the other projects in our space, as well as all the other chains that we integrate. Like, rather than infighting, let's just we're all on the same side, and it all benefits all of us. And yeah, it's just cool to see like everything continuing to really get fleshed out in our space. So yeah, I'm super excited for the years to come.
Except for the bridges. Screw those guys.
Yeah, we'll see the cards will fall, where they will. The wrap tokens, the CFI, it's already happening.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. But yeah, we love to see THORChain, ShapeShift. It is really the match made in heaven of front end and back end, and we love to see this happening and just see the communities and just the product just be that much better and come closer together. So we would also love to see ShapeShift just implement all of the cool things that THORChain does and will do in the future. Things that are on the roadmap. So just seeing seeing ShapeShift just become a more feature complete THORChain front end for everything that it does is going to be just a really awesome process. And obviously we love everything you guys have been doing already, everything you guys stand for. We think that it really is just two sides of the same coin, as the tweet that I put out was. So yeah, thank you so much guys for coming on. We'll make sure this is uploaded to YouTube pretty soon. Actually, we got one more question here from K Coefficient. I'm letting him up right now. This will be the last one. Hey, K Coefficient.
Hey guys.
What's up?
Hey guys. You were cutting out there when you were going over the airdrop eligibility. So, just for clarification, all Rune or all THORChain LPs are eligible or not?
So not all. And what's up, K Coefficient? Good to see you.
What's up?
So only for if it's a Cosmos pool, an Ethereum pool, or an AVAX pool, and that includes any of the ERC20s. And the reason for that, or if you provided symmetrically, and then you will also be included. But yeah, if you just provided UTXO coin, like Bitcoin, single-sided, for example,
Yes,
you would not be
correct.
eligible. All the details for that are linked from the tweet thread that I dropped, and from the proposal link from that tweet thread. Just for
Yeah. I've read through that several times over the last month. So
apologies.
I'm still like, I don't know, like what. I'm gonna move some LP positions. That's for sure. So. All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And yeah, apologies in advance for anyone who tries to dive into the details. It definitely, there's a lot to digest if you want to understand all the different things you can do to qualify. We're actually working on a page that's a little bit cleaner, a page in the ShapeShift app to help make that clearer, because yeah, to your point, it's quite a bit. But the reason for that is that we wanted to really make sure that a lot of the awesome community members that we would hope to be members of this community and governors for Archeo were included in that initial airdrop. I'll also mention that it's entirely funded by ShapeShift DAO. There's no VCs, so 25% of the Archeo tokens are going to the community in the form of an airdrop, and then I think it's 40% or something is going to the community treasury. So majority is going to the community, which we love to see. So hope to see you guys in the Archeo community as well when that goes live, ETA Q2 this year.
Yeah, definitely. Q2. I'll hold Chad to it. Thanks.
Cool, guys. So we do these spaces every single Friday, basically, whenever we can, unless, we're busy. So feel free to come through, any of the ShapeShift guys, and let's definitely do some more joint spaces together. We'll definitely be coordinating and, focusing our marketing efforts on just getting more users and meeting users where they are, just getting more savers into ShapeShift. And just a reminder, now that savers vaults are open, now's the time to deposit your Ether liquidity, your BNB, AVAX, Atom, Dogecoin, Bitcoin Cash, and Litecoin. It's all there. So tell your friends, tell everyone that likes to interact on chain that these things are open. And thanks so much, guys. We'll see you soon.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Guys.
See you guys.
Have a good one.